It's just nuts. The surveillance here, you guys, is 10,000 steps ahead of what you'd ever expect. They've got nanotech in our systems, in our bloodstream, which is the river of life, you guys, that is monitoring all biological processes in human beings. Like, most people are unable to perceive that, to understand it, etc. Oh well. Most people are not destined for really hearing their calling in this lifetime and shattering the perceptual veil and becoming whole again. And that's essentially what Christ was trying to teach his disciples, etc. You've got to become whole again. And it's really difficult to become whole when you're living in a broken system that's designed to fragment you, in a sense, right? To fragment you, to confuse you, to fill you full of all this perversion and all this nonsense. This is such a gross fucking realm. And I'm not talking about Earth. I'm not talking about the natural shamanic biosphere that we live in. I'm talking about the disgusting pigpen land of the bottom feeder matrix. The overarching agenda of the New World Order, the number one goal of theirs, and they've already succeeded with flying colors, is to completely shut off what's known by the Gnostics as the spark. And the spark is kind of a metaphor, in a sense, of the ability to raise Kundalini in your system, up your spine. The energy goes up the spine, gets into the head, gets into the promised land, reawakens the king and the queen's chamber, the pineal and the pituitary glands, and then you see through the eye of Christ. There's so much that could be said about Kundalini, but guys, in essence, and to try to keep this one short, the overarching agenda of the New World Order, whatever you want to call this disgusting antichrist system, is to stop the flow of Christ energy through the collective. And Kundalini is the risen Christ, you guys. Christ is the risen Kundalini, excuse me. Christ consciousness, it's a state of consciousness. When that Kundalini gets into the head, you guys, you now access perceptual fluidity, and you can now see into beyond the visible light spectrum on the electromagnetic spectrum. They've changed the way our genes work, and in doing so, they've figured out a way to shut off, quite literally, the expression of Kundalini through the cells, through the genes, through the chromosomes, through the genetic material, the DNA, inside of the nucleus of your cells. They've figured out a way to shut you off, and it's been implemented successfully. We are living in a fallen state. But I can't stand being around normal people. Normies, if you want to call them that. I can barely stomach it now. But we live in a world that, postulates, if you will, this idea that everything's about acceptance. Just accept everyone for who they are, even if they're part of a dehumanizing agenda to completely terraform God's creation and bastardize it into something that we're not supposed to be, right? We're supposed to just love everyone and tolerate everyone. Well, I'm not here for that. I am not. I actively resist the world. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking essentially about the Matrix, which is Satan's kingdom, which is what we're currently living in. And if you can't see that, you guys, what do you think? You think all that garbage in the tap water, the thousands of forever chemicals, are just there by accident? No, this is the type of stuff that happens in a New World Order hedge maze. This is the type of stuff that exists in a hellish realm. We live in a paradise, Eden realm, if you will, that's been hijacked by all the wrong people who managed at some point in time to get the majority of the power and the resources. And they've set up their garbage reality. And because no one has ever had a reference point outside of what they've been taught by culture through school, media, etc., people just whistle along thinking that this is what we're designed to experience. This is what life is, right? Basically being a glorified slave. But you don't think you're a slave because you exist in a prison without walls. You have some degree of freedom in your prison. The biggest issue is ourself. Most of us have mind control without even knowing we have mind control. See how ingenious this all is? And this is all about taking us away from Kundalini energy, folks, which was the operating system of our ancient ancestors. Why do you think they could build these religious edifices and monuments and artifacts and these megalithic structures with 70-ton pillars, etc.? You ever look at the pyramids in Egypt? You know, a lot of the granite and the stones that were used to build the pyramids were taken from a quarry over 500 miles from where they were built. Imagine moving stones that big through the sand, up and down, up and down. I mean, the story, our version of history is even bullshit, you guys. We are in the underworld. We are navigating the murky waters of the underworld. The Kundalini showed me this on a handful of occasions. We are in a transitionary state between two realms. Heaven is not a place that you go when you die. It's a state of consciousness. We can create heaven on earth by raising Kundalini, and that's the return of Christ. The return of Kundalini is the return of Christ. But they've lied to you about what Jesus is as well. So again, this is a giant wormhole of confusion, of chaos. It's a puzzle. We exist in a hedge maze puzzle that's been placed here. But we can navigate out of this if we gain enough lucidity and work on our health and strengthen ourselves against the reality tides of this insanity. It strongly appears, you guys, that all of Earth's history, the real history of Earth, was deleted. And we've been given this suboptimal, I don't even know how to explain it, you guys. This is a mess. Let me just tell you, this is a fucking mess. And if you knew what our potential was, what we could achieve as a species, you'd know that this is hell. How long have I been telling you that this place is fucking hell? Wars everywhere, starvation, poverty on a mass level. Most of the world is poor, folks. And a small percentage of the philanthropists and the bigwigs and etc., they have the majority of the money and they're buying up all of the land. And pretty soon, if things don't, change, we're going to be in 1984 on steroids. And I know it's cute to think that I'm being sensational and, oh, Brandon's, here he goes again, conspiracy theorist. But folks, I haven't been wrong for the most part. I have been about certain things, you bet. We all are. But for the most part, everything I've told you since day one about this mess has been 100% accurate. Some of us have a above the target bird's eye view of what's really going on here because we pay attention, right? We pay attention. And that's one thing that the plebs don't like doing because they like being entertained. What do you think all these movies are for, folks? And these television programs and all of the drama on the news about celebrities and, oh, look who got a fake ass this week and fake boobs this week and all the other nonsense. They're keeping you on a cyclical loop where they feed you bits of information that keep you anchored in a mental coagulation based on those units of information. Catch my drift? Oftentimes, the way that we perceive things is incorrect based on limited information that we have. Our senses have been conditioned to only take in a very small percentage of the actual truth of what's going on, and to a large extent, this is a byproduct of our evolution. We have had to evolve in a way that limited our entire grasp of reality to the point where we just learned to focus on the basic details in survival. I hope that makes sense. So if you take a creature that has practically no limits, we're limitless, and you throw them into a situation where for hundreds of years they're just focused on survival, where they can barely make ends meet, over time the filtering mechanisms of our awareness and our perception and our senses gets conditioned, and we start to look at reality through a very limited lens, that lens being survival and reproduction. And that's what we've been doing for hundreds of years as a species. So this is done largely through the repositioning of something known as the assemblage point. We've gone over that in the past, and I'm not going to be repetitive in this video. But in layman's terms, the assemblage point is a piece of our energy field that dictates how much of the electromagnetic spectrum our perception can actually engage with. It's like a governor on a vehicle. A governor on a vehicle dictates how fast you can how fast you can drive the vehicle. So my mom's Honda had one. The car could only go to about 105. When the governor was removed, you could excel the limitations of the governor, and now you could go past 105. We have a governor of sorts in our electromagnetic field, in our aura. It's a part of our energy field. It's known as the assemblage point. Shamans have known about this for hundreds and hundreds of years. Don Juan Matus, the Yaqui Indian sorcerer throughout Carlos Castaneda's stories, who teaches Carlos, refers to it as the assemblage point. But there's a multitude of different ways that you could describe this particular part of our energy field. The assemblage point is a really perfect way of describing it, however, because it assembles pieces of information from the world around us and configures it into a readable or manageable script, if that makes sense. So the world that we live in is just pure information, energy. Our perception takes all of that energy, siphons it through the assemblage point, and creates like a manageable script for our senses and our perception based on our current position of the assemblage point. It's a rather difficult thing to explain, folks. But basically, in layman's terms, this is a world of energy. And we exist within a vacuum of sorts inside of this energy field known as an aura. It keeps us inside this energy field, this vortex of sorts, but as an isolated unit. So our auric field actually holds all of our molecular components together. It condenses everything. It condenses matter into a vacuum of sorts, but outside of this vacuum, there is something that I've come to call the God grid, it's just basically sacred geometry that's all aware of itself. These filaments and fibers, these bands of light that are what's responsible for creating matter in the material realm. Now our senses can no longer perceive this realm, this geometric grid that holds everything together. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And shamans have known about this for a very long time. There's different names for this, folks. I believe throughout Carlos Castaneda's books, Don Juan Matus refers to this as the eagle's vision, when an individual can actually see the truth. You should be reading the Carlos Castaneda, the books, which are a beautiful manual on how to live in a non-ordinary fashion in this strange, absolutely insane world. The teachings of Don Juan are worth their weight in gold. And I've been suggesting that people read through these books for years, and I don't think most of my viewers have even picked up the first book. Those books are far more than just fun stories to read. They're an instruction manual on how to shift the assemblage point. You see, Don Juan, whether he was real or not, knew what was up. He knew that our senses, our awareness had been programmed over time to look at reality through a very specific set of lenses, and those lenses aren't giving us the full truth. So our perception has been designed to trick us, folks. That's the problem here in this matrix. And this is one thing that's really difficult for people to digest, because a lot of people want to believe that they're right. They don't want to believe that the way that they've lived their lives has been incorrect or out of balance. This is an ego complex. People always want to think that they're right. So you come into this world, you're programmed. You are the byproduct of programmed people as well. Those genetics are handed down to you, through your parents. You're brought up in a world that further solidifies your conditioning. And then you grow in this world that feeds your ego. So people that like agree with science and I agree with the experts and I've got my degrees and my PhDs. You think you know everything, but you're existing in a world, ladies and gentlemen, where you're using 1% of your potential. How can you know everything when you're only aware of less than 1% of the actual truth? So you can look at a well-seasoned shaman or an alchemist that had never gone to school or gotten any degrees or any of that, and they're far wiser than many of the quote-unquote most prestigious experts of today's world. We've got to get outside of this idea that book smarts equate to intelligence. Book smarts equate to intellectualism. There's a difference between intellectualism and wisdom. Wisdom, folks, has to do with your understanding of the world and the mechanics that run it. I'm talking about the spiritual mechanics. Understanding how the stock market works, that's not wisdom, that's intelligence. You might be seasoned in a particular field, but that doesn't mean you actually have wisdom. That does not mean that you actually know the mysteries of your human body, the secrets of the absolute that they are keeping hidden from you, folks. I'm just going to say that at the core of it, we're exposed to typically about 200 to 500 toxins a day or more. And on top of that,
There's the visual toxicity of living in these artificial control grids. There's the electromagnetic frequencies that are toxic that dysregulate the proper uptaking of oxygen by the cellular system. The electromagnetic frequencies, they're an invisible pollution. They're an invisible prison that you cannot see. But the electromagnetic frequencies pass through the layers of your flesh into your protoplasm and into your cells. And inside of your cells, you have cellular fluid, cytoplasm, you have a cell wall. The frequencies get past the cell wall, go into the cytoplasm, and start to vibrate and affect the little organelles inside of your cells, your mitochondria, your lysosomes, you name it, the nucleus, and all the genetic information in each of the cells. Your cell is a living organism that contains things known as organelles, folks, and organelles are a fancy term for something that means little organs. Inside of each and every single one of your cells is a total ecosystem, and these ecosystems work together in a symbiotic fashion to keep your body functioning, to keep your mind alert, you name it. The frequencies, the electromagnetic frequencies, strongly affect the health of the organelles. These are the basic building blocks of what makes you who you are. There is so much going on right now that I can't even convey with words just how grim things are looking. Again, we live very sheltered lives here in the Matrix, folks. It's very easy to think that things are just honky-dory when you're not doing the work, when you're not looking past the veil.
Most people have never experienced higher states of consciousness like this, so they think that what they're anchored in now is all that there is, right? See how the mind gets the best of you? You've made it up in your head before you even go about seeking the truth that you can't attain it.
You know deep down that something's wrong here. So what is the Antichrist system? What is the Antichrist? The Antichrist is a false spirit that leads you away from what Christ actually is, which is the risen Kundalini. You see, through Kundalini, we know Christ. Christ is a bandwidth of energy that is designed to move through our body, much like our blood is. It's a part of who we are, in the same way that our heart is. It's a rhythm. It's a connection to the angelic spheres. It's so much more. It's like I don't have time in these videos to get into all the details. But unlike our heart, here's the thing. We can't live without a heart, because the heart moves blood, etc. But there's a part of within our genome, there's a part of our body and our mind and our genetics that we can live in a fallen state separated from Christ consciousness. And that's what we're in right now. The true step forward with human evolution and development will be the reattainment of Christ consciousness. Until then, you guys, I don't know what to tell you.
The lust for truth should be stronger than your desire to feel comfortable in this world, ladies and gentlemen. And unfortunately, many people have fallen into the trap of comfort, turning a blind eye at things, shuttering themselves from the hardcore truths of this material realm, this matrix. Most people are not even aware that they exist in a puzzle of illusions, a very ingeniously fabricated mind control arena that we call reality currently. It's remarkably unfortunate. It's sad, and it's disturbing and, in my opinion, disgusting beyond words, but it is what it is. We have to make the most of this. So, walking the razor's edge and fulfilling or living the hero's journey does not come without strife. Was it not Christ who told you that through great wisdom comes great suffering, great strife? It's the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Christ also constantly warned you of the evil of this world. So to all of you people who want to tell me that I'm a fearmonger for trying to warn you of the very hardcore insanity in this world that's running the show, you can throw your words at me all you want. Yap. It is what it is. You see, there is a malevolent force in this dimension that's hijacked into the politicians, it's hijacked into people in positions of power, and it's working through them to corrupt the human gene pool. It's working through them to terraform this reality, which was designed to be a literal Garden of Eden on steroids. They're turning it into a dystopia, the likes of which many people have no clue. They have no ability, to be able to fathom in their current brainwashed state. So the programming is remarkably extensive, the mind control is remarkably extensive, and most people who think that they're free from it are still in its clutches. My channel has always been a warning system, an alarm system, but also a message of hope. Alarms are loud, repetitive, and obnoxious. I can't speak today. So we really do have to sit back and ask ourselves, what's most important in life? Is it holding on to the illusions because they make you feel good? Or is it becoming stronger by facing the truth? Developing courage, walking the razor's edge, fulfilling the hero's journey, going up the hill, going up the mountain, instead of staying on the sheep or slave plantation, ladies and gentlemen. We should all follow in the footsteps of the goat, not the sheep. The goat climbs to the top of the mountain. It's fearless. To quote Dr. Reverend Phil Valentine, what do sheep do? Well, they stand in their little confined area, staring at the back of the other sheep's ass. They are easily flocked. They are easily led in whatever direction the sheep herder guides them towards. But everybody wants to get along to go along, or go along to get along, however it goes. It's true. You see, most people aren't privy to the fact that we are fallen angels. We have the ability to become enlightened through Kundalini rising. In this culture, the way it's set up, this material realm of illusions, the way it's set up, like a hologram within a hologram within a hologram. This world, this culture, etc., this reality is designed to thwart your spiritual evolution and to keep you from unlocking the gems of the dragon, the gems of Horus, the wisdom of Quetzalcoatl. So it takes your gnosis, it takes your divine birthright of communion with the source through Kundalini, and it shatters it into a million little pieces, and it leaves you here in this material realm. And what do people do? Well, they go along to get along, or they get along to go along, right? Everybody wants to fit in with everybody. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity, folks. If we only had a reference point to what we could be, this world would be a different place, because people would know fundamentally that they're living in a state of hypnosis if they had that reference point, if they had an experience with gnosis, if they had an experience outside of what they view as being normal, the day-to-day monotony, right? The grind, the hustle to make ends meet, burning the candle at both ends, thinking it's normal because you don't have a reference point. This body, this mind is designed to be merged with God through Christ, Christ being the risen Kundalini, God being the monad, the secret, true, and living hidden God within our genes, connected to the pleroma, the realm of lights. Now my message, this channel, etc., it's hard for me with my channel or with my message to convey just how extensive the fall of man and woman has been or is. It's remarkable, you guys. We are living in a simulation of sorts, operating on our lower mind, operating on the lowest energetic output of this divine machine, this body, this cell suit, this avatar. Wow.